Wow. I am not sure that helped very much. No, apparently it did. Like, full on. Well, alright. Neat. Cool. Alright. I don't really know what it's trying to do, actually. It's kind of acting weird. It claims it's healthy though, so I don't know. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Okay. Whatever. We can say that's good. That's good. Well, I don't know why the kilobits is not receiving enough video to maintain streaming. What the fuck? What's going on, buddy? Hey there, buddy. What's up? Looks fine. Looks pretty happy on here. I'd like to understand why it's so mad. I thought that was Still seems kind of pissy. Okay. Well, I lowered it. So, should be fine. Hi, everybody. Okay, welcome back. How's it going? Are we feeling good? Yeah, alright. I think it's working. I think. It sure seems like it. Or I can just try grabbing my spare Ethernet port and see if that's the problem. That will definitely do something. Maybe. Because I'm invested now. I want to see what the issue is. Woohoo! Jank stream! Jank stream! Well, I don't know. I don't know. All right. That's good enough. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back. Yeah, we'll let everyone catch up, I guess. Hello, hello. Not Firefox. Yeah, that sounds about right. God. Okay. Well, we got a new Ethernet cable. We got a new Soul. And, yeah. Don't mind me. Sorry, I'm distracted. Okay, good. Anyway. Yeah, she's fucking screwed. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted by somebody. What are we doing again? Right, this is DWM. Okay, so previously we talked about how we wanted the desktop window manager. So we've ported it back, blah, 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 you know. So the desktop window manager. That. Warning, don't stream in Yoshi, apparently. Okay, so I keep getting fucking distracted. Oh, god damn it. Fuck. Hi, yes. Oh well. I guess it's fine. This is why I shouldn't download Twitter, actually. This is a valid reason for not doing so. Hi. Okay, I've said that a couple times. Nothing. I haven't done jack shit yet. Okay, so previously we've talked about how we wanted to end up dealing with DWM. So this architecture exists even in Windows 11 now. It is pretty much the only way pretty much the main way Windows does its rendering, blah, 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 who cares? This was introduced in Vista, and this feature allows us to do funny haha effects and every benefit of composition with a module. So, DWM's pretty well known and notorious in its early life, so we have quite a few differences. Over the normal one. So, it kind of works like this. If we had to force out something to paint with it, where Win32K ends up deciding what to draw on the screen, there is DWM.exe and UX.SMS, we'll say. Then there's UX. Actually, no, let's still do it like this. This talks to here. We'll make it more clear. This talks to here, which we'll say this talks to here, this talks to here. So we have a bunch of squares, and this is what basically is going on. This is Win32K. This is DWM.exe. This is UX.SMS.dll. This is DWM reader. This is DWM API. This is uDWM. And this is Milcore, let's say. So I'm going to map this out slightly. And yeah. Sorry. I'm gonna map this out slightly. So there is, let's call them LPC, or a communication pipe. There's an LPC pipe, but let's call them a communication pipe between Win32K and DWM. So I'm going to make my own arrow because I'm cool. Win32K directly talks to DWM. DWM communicates back and forth. Whoosh. Now I'll actually do an arrow with UX.SMS. UX.SMS gets talked to by DWM API. DWM API, then we'll go through that. This will talk to DMW reader. This will talk to uDWM, which talks to Milcore. Back and forth. Back and forth. And it basically is kind of like this. Okay, so I'm simplifying it a little bit, but I'm going to highlight this for a moment because what I want to do is talk about the theory about it for a moment. Mostly because this has been very complicated to make this communication right. So these are orange pieces, let's call them, are going to be basically, I'm not going to highlight that differently. Basically are these LPC messages plus data. Whoop, whoop. These are basically LPC messages plus data. So UX.SMS decides that it's going to be what actually... God damn it. Okay, UX.SMS decides what's going to be what starts DWM.exe. DWM.exe then tells UX.SMS what its API port is, so DWM API can talk to it. That, after that happens, then a new pipe is created between these two once that happens. So this never starts the communication, this does, between WM API, and it's kind of a weird mess here, and it's really hard to follow. And I think that's why a lot of people had trouble understanding it. So the approach I took in trying to build this architecture was not to worry about reverse engineering it so much. The internal mechanisms of it don't really matter towards what we need to do when we really think about it. All that really has to happen is that these communications have to be accurate towards some Windows version, and the exports from DWM API have to be accurate. So the ReactOS DWM is going to be slightly different, but have the same style of communication. So I'm highlighting this. I made this little chart to show that is very much a clusterfuck. There is 2 API ports. Sometimes there's more if you have multiple sessions with DWM initialized. And that's why probably people have a hard time with it. The bigger problem too comes when trying to deal with how content actually gets to uDWM, because if you look at it, there's almost nothing touching it. DWM.exe. Wow, that's crazy. YouTube keeps changing things on purpose sometimes, and it's not the best. DWM.exe has quite a bit of... it has a type of jobs for it to communicate with. To think about the best way to word this. I created a library to facilitate that connection and simplify it. So what this functionality is a very, very simplified version of what actually happens. So this is our DWM.exe. And yeah, it's not very complicated when you mark it all down. DWM.exe's other jobs, other than just acting as the communication port, is basically prepping all the sanity checks that need to happen for DWM to be enabled. And this kind of escalates into being, why DWM is the way it is, all these version checks, and why you need to still have your hard drive or your GPU be the right thing, and blah, 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 blah. All that actually happens in the communication between DWM and UXSMS. So UXSMS itself as well is just not super complicated. I only really implement right now a couple things for UXSMS because ours doesn't need to do very much. So here's our goal. Why am I like quantifying this? Here's our goal. The ReactOS DWM, this part right here isn't going to be like Windows at all. Our goal is to avoid, or sorry, not avoid, but not try to attempt any compatibility in these two components. So these dispatch messages and decide what state DWM is capable of running in. As in, DWM.exe itself often calls licensing calls and graphics capability testing. It hooks into Milcore manually just to figure out the graphics state if you're using a WDDM card or not. And all of this reports back to the API port for UXSMS. And basically what ends up happening is over here off in a corner, UX theme basically ends up finding this information out. So the facilitated logic that happens inside the facilitated logic that happens inside of DWM.exe and UXSMS.dll don't really need to be directly compatible. And so our architecture, our DWM stack, if you want to call it, isn't going to be compatible with Windows directly. It might work on Windows. I don't really know, and I'm not going to test it directly. So this part, only ReactOS. Meanwhile, what actually matters down here replaceable, spelled wrong. This is replaceable. So my point is, if you want to take the ReactOS DWM stack, don't replace these two. That's my point. I am recording this part, and I will probably clip it, yes, to quantify the fact that replacing these two, probably bad idea. This is never going to work. I'm not going to try to make it work. Maybe someone will try to make it work and be compatible, but right now, I don't see a benefit. I see no benefit to try and figure out how that communication works, or sorry, how to make it completely work on Windows and replace all the behaviors it needs to do, because what it needs to do in ReactOS is far, far simpler. So, if you are looking at ReactOS's future source code, looking to see how DWM works internally, there's notes for how these two work inside the DWM or inside the DWM source code, but these are not going to be inherently compatible. These, on the other hand, will be replaceable most likely as long as you replace these three together. The communication that happens between these three is very, very strict. Now, this probably is not going to be 100% how it works. In fact, right now, all I've been testing is this component on Windows. I've already have a version of this thanks to people actually, a couple people in the Discord and stuff trying to fix the building process for the open source Milk core, and trying to fix just a couple other things. DWM Reader is just not that complicated. And DWM API is really not that complicated. So we have I have not pushed this yet, but we have implementations pretty much of all these components now. So the only thing we have to worry about is uDWM at this point. So, right. It's really complicated. It's hard to look at. It's going to be hard to review. And so we're simplifying our goals a little bit. That is the mission statement. We are not going to try and make these replaceable. We are going to make these replaceable. The LPC communication pipes that happen are going to be compatible up to a point. Sure. I will probably only make it so right now what we're trying to do is test this module on Windows. Okay, this module on Windows. Right there. I'm saying practically these two will never be replaceable in the purple circle, but these all have a chance. So if you are trying to study how DWM works by using the ReactOS source code, that's the notes I would sit on, basically, and consider. And anyone that's just following along in this stream will understand that better. So, right. I could go over how these two work, but for people that want to do things with our DWM and make visual aspects, they do not matter. They are the most useless components. You just ignore them. These, on the other hand, are interesting. So, let's go over vaguely what these are doing. DWM Reader, this one, has the ability to take the LPC messages, so this format, and translate it into an operation for this by calling into an interface. Its other job is actually managing the internal window data. So Win32k passes a bunch of information down about a window that it wants to do some bullshit with. I can do better than that, hang on. So Win32k has a window it wants to pass down. Pretty much. I never knew you live stream. What's up, everybody? Hello, 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 welcome. Yeah, I haven't in a long time, but this is a special occasion, so I will. Oh, I should post this on Twitter. I'm posting it on Twitter. Hang on. How best would somebody contact you? Discord. Just Discord. It's only been a few months. My Discord's just that. Literally that. Okay, so where does DWM core fit into all of this? That is a very good question. All right, let's talk about that for a second. If we move over here a little bit, let's just make another paint instance. Watch. Bam, bam. Okay, so a long time ago, Okay, sorry. I keep getting distracted. I'm like, you know what? Is that a good answer? I don't know. Okay. Okay. So, this is Vista. I'm going to answer that question that Olive sent. This is Vista. And that's fine. This is Vista SP1, SP0 through SP1. Or SP2, sorry. Let's say this is Windows 7. So a long time ago, when Microsoft started Windows 7's development, does Brody Robertson ringing bells? I think so? Yeah, I think he does Linux stuff, right? I think so. Maybe. My brain's a little toast, I'm not gonna lie. I've been doing this for hours. I had work and I immediately jumped to this. So, my brain's fried. Wow, I'm so sorry. Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot where I was going with this. Oh, right, Windows 7. So, this is Vista. Let's talk about Windows 7. So during Windows 7's development, I believe what ended up happening was a couple very reasonably big problems happened with DWM. For one thing, Vista is slow. Vista is insanely slow with this. Its ability to do this kind of sucks. So what Vista did was that they first implemented asynchronous connections. So they enhanced the ability to deal with LPC and use their new architecture that came out with Vista, now that it was, stable, used for a while. Yeah, sounds good. No problem. You're good. I like answering questions. That's what this is for. So this, wow, I do not remember where I was going with this. Okay. So to deal with this, my brain's so toast. I'm sorry. Yeah, so they introduced the new architecture with Vista, ALPC, allows for asynchronous LPC connections, blah, 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 blah. Who cares? Advanced, not whatever. Cool. I'll look at it in a little while. It allowed DWM to speed up. So DWM core was started, I think, because Milcore had too much crap in it. So at the time that this was going on in Win 7, a lot of code was shifted around and moved. And I believe they did Milcore mostly because of these functions. What you see here is media functions like audio and video. And I believe Milcore turned into DWM core mostly because of that. So what you're asking really is, where does DWM core come into this? Well, Milcore is DWM core. So if I wanted to turn this into DWM core, all I would really have to do is just delete a couple functions. Add some ability for advanced LPC, and bam, basically I have DWM core. So while Windows 7 is much faster, And eventually Windows 8 would have direct composition, which brought this logic to kernel mode in some degree. So this logic right here and some of this logic back to the kernel. What we're doing here in Vista is a simplified version of this architecture. So while I do want to spend time understanding the interfaces that were introduced in Windows 7, the way Windows 7 does this is far more than ReactOS can handle right now. So this is already, I'm going to be honest, a bad idea. This is inherently a bad idea. And this is a bad idea because our Win32K is not that great. There's more important things to do right now. And frankly, nobody on the project is that interested in this at this point. But we're going to do it anyway for a reason that at some point I will go down the road and reveal. In order for this to work, however, and us to create what became Windows 7 and what became 10, 8, 11, we need to create this base ground because the core elements have only had useless stuff removed and basic, things copied and pasted to new spots. And so it's kind of, and using a bit more LPC concepts to expand these batch buffers and make it all faster. So Windows 7 is just insane. It's just, far, far faster with these operations, and they renamed a file and removed some code. But the the base ground that you build in Vista really needs to exist before you do 7. We could skip and start theoretically just making DWM core. In fact, that is what we're going to do. We are already talked about removing some of the extra code within DWM core, specifically this audio-visual component. This audio-visual component, probably not something we need, and we will probably remove that. And that is what they did with DWM core. But again, this is just us trying to find some way to deal with, the basic idea. It's not that we couldn't deal with that. It's that we probably shouldn't right now. What is some of this for if it isn't used? So WPF. Milcore was part of WPF, and so there was a ton of Milcore that was shared in the system. The magnifier in Windows as well. It wasn't used for that specifically, but it was all shared apps that used the same module. But when DWM core was basically forced to exist, they opted for making it only around DWM. So this extra garbage is... No, Yoshi, I don't. This extra garbage is there, basically. So it's not that WM core doesn't fit into this, it's that it already kind of is forming, so it doesn't make a big difference. And it's not like they tried to hide what it was doing. Whoa. But whatever, it's fine. Boop, boop. Okay. So, we know that this is the Windows 7 architecture, and I will save this as Windows 7. But let's go back a little bit and think about Windows Vista only for now. So, looking at the Windows Vista architecture, as I mentioned, I'm a big fan. Hi, welcome to the stream, Pierce. I really hope I said that name right, because if I didn't, I'm sorry. Oh, that's me forgetting how to say names all the time. the normal stuff. Okay, so let's go back for a little bit. Now we can focus on Windows Vista again. But this logic basically applies to 7 and parts of 8 as well. So Win32k decides that it wants to make a window. And to draw this window, it has elements, content. Woo, 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 woo. I probably would have helped if I did that in another pen, huh? And a brush. So it has, just try that again. Okay. It has elements, content, and animations and effects attached to it. This window is attached to a desktop. So everything is a child of that desktop. Hey, Waru. She's funny. Okay, so where was I again? I'm going to accept this. Okay, accept that friend request. Okay, so we have content in a window, and elements attached to it. So this starts running commands and sending it to DWM.exe, specifically its API port. This API port breaks down the commands and sends it to DWM Reader almost directly. DWM Reader breaks it down into specific operations and then sends it to uDWM. You can see that here. If you break and I do this, we can see that yes, there's some memory corruption. Don't worry about that. But you can see that the first thing that happens is the port thread. The next thing that happens is port thread internal, route packet, internal process command and redirection, dispatch mill message, redirection manager mill messages. Sounds good. I got it. Don't worry. I accepted them. Oh, create window, child create. And then, it calls uDWM. Fair enough. I wouldn't either. Mine's just too obvious. So, here's the deal. We know now that as things happen down to uDWM, it breaks down into whatever resources it needs to handle the job. So specifically, that's close enough. For instance, let's look at this DWM window interface. It is a bunch of DWM functions that are attached to it. And these are just from symbols, so, just one-to-one match for now. Sorry if I don't know what you... Oh, okay, sorry. I thought I accidentally deleted your message for a second. I was like, oh, when did I do that? Anyway, these functions are things our uDWM can use to grab information about the window. So let's look at this information for a moment. The style, the handle, the sprite handle. I don't even know what that is, actually. I don't understand that. Has DX context, get flip 3D window policy. And blah, 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 blah. So we can gather private information about this window by using these APIs. And this makes sense because if we look at this, we know that whatever happens here, we probably don't want every DLL to know the internal window data. And so it passes through DWM, gets to the proper, lower level restrictions, and passes it to reader. And it redirects the information into uDWM. Okay, so every operation that happens occurs like this. From glass to animations to whatever. So what is uDWM then? And uDWM is the user mode effect, or something like that. I don't care what they call it internally. DLL for handling that. It figures out what to send to Milcore to render. It generates commands and sends it to Milcore. And I mean that quite literally. Milcore is like a massive game engine. And this game engine needs to have objects to render. And that's how it's architected. And that's how this entire thing is architected. You create a connection, and you create a channel, and you commit to that channel. So, I haven't spoken this much in months. So, with all of this in mind, we can start considering how uDWM should work. And you can see this big idea within our DLLs, of course, where we also have exports, we also have the API port, the basic connections made, our Milcore, and the service, all the way down to uDWM, which will communicate with Milcore directly. So, if we look at this, and we don't really know what Microsoft's doing internally, and frankly, this is all just test code. All of this will probably be rewritten, let's be honest. Oh, I've just been busy, All of this, architecturally, comes down to the same basic idea of creating a channel, setting up that channel, connecting that channel, and committing information to that channel. And so I abstracted it. What we have here is just basic startup code that we can vaguely tell is happening, and we can logically know is happening, but we've made our own mil resource class now. And mil resource class abstracts out what should happen. And what should happen is create or add a reference on channel and commit and append data to send commands. If we go to DWM Visual, which is another class that I've invented, it sends commands. These commands can be simplified into mil commands. Mil commands, as in APIs, just like a game engine. So this is an open sourced MIT implementation of Milcore done by, open source by Microsoft. So perfectly allowed for us to use, that's MIT. And inside this header is a bunch of commands, and we can start considering those commands. Mil command visual set alpha, for instance. It takes a handle to the resource, an alpha double value, and a mil command type. The mil command type just being telling it what it should do. In here, we know it's mil command visual set alpha. All right, that makes perfect sense. Using this, we'll be able to take the mil resource and operationally send it down, and mil resource send command. Okay, so really, the lower you get on this chart that I've made, the simpler the logic becomes. While this, I don't really want anyone to try and bother understanding, because I think our version of it's going to be fine. This, probably really difficult to mentally grasp around. For DWM, that's crazy. I believe so. That's what I would consider it. It's a game engine. Get a game engine that's powering not just WPF. It's a shared code base, eventually forked in Windows 7, of course, but it's a game engine powering every window rendering. That's why the windowing rendering improved so much. So while I don't expect people to understand this top level, I also don't really expect people to understand how DWM API or reader works. But when you start to go down to here, Milcore and uDWM, it's actually pretty sane. The logic here of how to operationally control these commands and ship it to, you know, the Milcore quote-unquote game engine isn't very complicated. All we have to do is to start to consider what data it needs to create these channels and resources. If the window can be broken down into these resources, then we can ship commands to render them based off of raw data or modify them in some way, which is what Glass does. Yes, while every window is drawn on a DirectX surface, that's true. That is exactly what DWM does. It can also apply commands to these surfaces, and as it should. Okay. So, is the quote-unquote game engine accessible from user space? Why not? After all, as long as you can find some way to dispatch commands into it, you can do it. If it's a game engine, you can run port Doom to it. Yes, I can, actually. And that's not a joke. I just can. I can absolutely do that. I can port Doom to every window on the screen at once. Okay, so now this is a class that's based off of the interface provided by DWM Reader, and it's not really implemented. Maybe, but if that's what he wants to do, I wouldn't bug him too much about it, and who knows? For now, let's focus on DWM. I guess, I don't know. Anyway. So if these Windows resources are given by commands to us by the create child create window, we can start to understand what they could be trying to do. We really don't have to sit there and probe and figure out what it's doing internally to put together what this should be. In fact, these function names aren't very complicated. And frankly, the exports that are coming in from here aren't very complicated either. If uDWM window is just an interface, and then our thing is just a interface that gets sent to it, and that is all this transaction does here. We can start to understand what we need to do from here. So, let's start putting that together. The biggest problem I had right now was actually calling this interface because I'm kind of doing it blind. I don't actually know how this should be structured. I know it's probably close, but calling this a vtable doesn't seem to be working very well. And so let's see why for a moment. We're jumping to the function successfully, it seems, right? Let's see. Maybe not. What's the problem? Isn't it a class? uDWM window void pointer. Wow, I just talked a lot. Anyway. So... I think that we should worry about... Yeah, sorry. In order for this to work, we need to figure out why this data isn't doing what we need it to. In theory, this set client data should be pointing to the right function, and I think it is. Let's see. Wow, my brain is toast, actually. I'm sorry. I have been working all day, and I did not think this through 100%. I'm glad the stream's working again, but whoa, my brain is fried. Okay. So, we know this vtable exists, and we're passing in a... I think you mentioned it before I jumped on the stream, but what software does uDWM allow to run? It's not uDWM that allows things to run per se, but instead the entire architecture. So the biggest fault here is probably Windows 10. When Windows 10 started getting, traction, applications decided that they were going to start calling DWM directly. And so there is a bunch of functions in DWM API that if they don't work, then things don't quite render right. And Chrome is one of them. Not only is Chrome one of them, but Steam is one of them now. So if ReactOS ever wants to actually work on modern software, we need this now. Because if the most, frankly, important apps are calling it, unfortunately we have to reverse it and figure out how it works and implement it. Now, the good news is that we don't actually have to reverse DWM very much. In fact, we barely have to reverse anything. In fact, we haven't reversed anything yet. The reality is that other than the interfaces between them that have to be fairly accurate, the internal code logic doesn't matter, and we actually understand what it's doing because A, ReactOS has mostly been built like that, and B, Milcore is open source. Wasn't DWM enforcement in Chromium only once 8.1 code got yeeted? That is a good question and point, but not exactly. So there's two things there. Number one, Chrome itself has some logical dependency on being performant on DWM before 8.1 code got yeeted. Now, it does work, but it performs awful. And a lot of... I already worked fine on DWM unless until everyone's deaf. Yeah, it does start, but it also just renders a little worse. Like, its performance is worse. That being said, we are also catching up rapidly to where we have to start considering Windows 10 versions of Chrome. Although our NT6 work isn't fully all merged in master yet, it will be eventually, and when that happens, quite a few versions of Chrome will work, and we've already gotten to the point where we've kind of hit the limit of what Windows 7 runs. So, things are happening. Sorry about my ignorance, but is uDWM an NT6 thing, or is it unrelated? uDWM was introduced in Vista, so 6.0. Unfortunately, yeah, it's that old. And we still don't have it. But that's the ReactOS way. Oh, man. What was I doing again? All right. I think that was all the questions. But yeah. Yeah, it does start and work. You can use it, but its performs a little worse. And Chrome's not the only one that has a problem. A lot of applications started to when Windows 8 came out and since. Not to mention that DWM API has to at least exist too for... Imagine if ReactOS ever got UWPs. Kind of need DWM for that too, to even consider it. There's somebody working on an implementation of all of the Xbox libraries for, Windows, and porting it to Windows using Wine as a basis, but making their own WinRT implementation. And the way we've talked about that is kind of turning into, could we do that? Likely. But the code base is massive. And from what I understand, it would be minutes and minutes of extra build time, which would be sucky. Pretty sure upstream Pale Moon supports 7+. I've gotten Pale Moon to work, so I don't know. Saying games for Windows Live would work eventually? I don't know, honestly. The guy that's doing that, we've talked about it. It should be possible, but we don't really know until we try. And frankly, we kind of need uDWM first to even consider it. But yeah, who knows? I think at this point, like, the fact that it's such a clean implementation and it's ROS, right? ROS accepts C++. It could be possible. All right. Primarily, I just wanted to make the live stream just to update things. We're going to try a few things, though, before I head off to bed, and then I'll do another one tomorrow, frankly, until we start to finish this. I would like to be done with this in a couple weeks, but maybe less, if I can. So, one of the glorious problems here is there enough implemented already? I've not attempted Windows yet, but this could be fun. So I think the latest Pale Moon... Oh, I'm trying to remember what it was. It has an... Oh, right. It has an issue with our job logic, so it's not quite there yet. Getting closer, but, not quite enough. Not quite enough. So... Okay, the first thing I've noticed here, actually, is that the uDWM window, this function pointer, basically, should be working fine. We pass it this, and it should... I know there was a few forks that worked, but they were based on older versions. Yeah, I think the latest version is getting stuck on job processes, which is a kernel thing that probably won't get fixed for a while. There's a PR to start fixing it, but I think it still gets stuck. What? So... I feel like I don't know. Unless they aren't that kind of call, which is possible, I guess. Let's see. I don't actually know. Maybe? I don't know. You know what? I think I screwed up. I think I screwed up. Let me see. Am I right? Let me check. I feel like that's what it is. Like, I think I screwed up how the calling convention is. I don't know. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm dumb. I think, yeah, okay, so changing that a little bit. I think I screwed up the calling convention. I think I might be stupid. Let's see. Let's see if Dark's stupid. I can be. I'm a little bit dumb. How dumb is the fire? For PowerPC Linux. You're... You're still trying to get that PowerPC Linux to work. That's funny. You should let me borrow that fork for my a Power Mac G5 quad core edition. You know, just cuz. Okay, I think... Let's see if this works. This probably... I don't know. Oh my gosh. Oh, Windows, why? What are you doing? Fully supports both 32 and 64-bit. Damn. I gotta get that for my Power Mac G5 quad core edition. Right? Right? Oh. Excuse me? Sir? Thank you. It's working now. God damn it. That was it. Wow. All right. Yeah, that was it. We've got our juicy window now. So now that that's done, the problem's been solved. Let's actually clean this up slightly. So we have this thing. We can grab and set our client data information to the thing. Do a little bit of that. Recompile. And then also, if you saw the animation that played, that's not an animation played by DWM. So it's the only thing that you actually saw on the screen, if you're curious. I just thought that was cool. Okay, here we go. All right, so now, bam. All right, now what should happen is yeah, kaboom. Yeah, see? It's just the fact that it goes doo 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 doo. Moving on. Okay. Hey, look, alpha change. Isn't that cool? That's new. Okay. We got update alpha change, move size, client margin chains. I'm good. What is this alpha change, I wonder? What does it actually do? Well, we can just check, I guess. Like, let's think about it. So, alpha change. I can feel the 8 billion arrows slowly being assembled. Yeah. I don't know what this would do. I have a feeling that would probably just call the operation for doing, I don't know, maybe? We're gonna have to create some API tests for this, I think. If I can. There's a couple ways I can. Now that we have this communication set up, which is actually what I really wanted to get done today, I didn't think it would be just done like that. What I can do is I can grab my DWM reader and grab my uDWM and alternate between switching them or replacing them. And with that, I will be able to basically figure out and write tests for what actually is going on. So we can just dump and figure out what it could be doing. Which is the best way to develop this. Very fun. So, yeah. Yeah. I just think it's neat. So, let's actually watch from the beginning here. I want to figure out what I need to do first. So it creates window, update window, create window, update windows, client margins change, create window, owner change, owner change, owner change, style change, update margins, Z order, update change, style change, move size, client margin change, clip change, update change, style change, and some asynchronous messages. Mark composition ready for start. The batch error called mill failure, unexpected H results. Who knows what that's actually doing there? Let's see. I have no idea. I guess I could search it really quick and see if like mill has any special error codes or something. It doesn't. I'm on my own now. I have no idea what this is getting mad about. Oh, you know what? Actually, I know what it's doing. Because what I did was something stupid. If we go back to window list and we find update. Yeah, okay. I was sending it garbage. My bad. Okay, let me fix that. And see if that changes what I need to prioritize. Okay, I was sending it garbage. That's my bad. I probably shouldn't have done that. I was just playing around. I was manually testing it and poking and prodding, basically. Makes it fun. Oh, man. Let's see. Okay. Let's pull that. Pull that. We're going to pull that. uDWM. Please. No, it's broken again. Okay, so now we get to wait for it to crash. do 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 do. I have to do that once in a while. I don't think Vista works very good with this, actually. I believe that's a thing. Also, I might go in and try to fix this. Yeah, I think that's probably the best plan. Cleaning this up, because I don't want it to be like this. I don't like this garbage sea crap thing that it's trying to be and not really know. That's so weird. That's so cool, though. Okay, so we need to spend a lot of time dealing with, I don't know, cleaning up this code and then building it into some classes. So why is basic still around in old cases? For compatibility reasons. By the way, if you watch, you can see when I move my mouse into the window, it starts spamming. Watch. Normal. Spam, 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 window. Normal. Spam, spam. All right. Would it be possible to use... Would it be possible to use like X11 or XFCE on ReactOS with the translation layer just for the Windows, or use a different driver system while keeping just the important parts of exe compatibility? I don't actually know what you mean. So ReactOS isn't an exe compatibility. It's full Windows open source, basically. It's reverse engineered kernel and understood and clean roomed everything, whatever. Like a shell, kernel, drivers. Like, we don't actually have, like, this is our kernel right here, the source to it. You can use its code and stuff. So it's not... I actually don't really understand your question. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, I think what I need to do now is clean this up and make it presentable, and then try to take our fixes and send it down the right direction, and we'll start implementing these little calls and exports. Basically, my voice is getting shot. So I am going to keep it short. This was mostly explanation and one bug fix for some reason that popped in. But I hope to do this again tomorrow, maybe? Maybe. else. Yeah, so I will hopefully, maybe, see you guys tomorrow. Are you at now? We are trying to move to Vista slowly. I'm trying to move to Vista slowly. I want to use HaikuOS drivers, exe apps, and Wayland with XFCE desktop. You know, Haiku actually has a port of Windows of like Wine, so I mean, never know. Yeah, we are a not super interoperable thing, but yeah. Anyway, I think that's everybody. Yeah, thank you all for watching and getting caught up with our horrible shenanigans. Yeah, I hope everyone has a